Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. It's 11 o'clock in Tel Aviv. It's 9 o'clock in Portugal. Thank you so much for our presenters. We're going to begin the presentations in 5 minutes. This period now is just for everyone to join and acclimate. I do want to review the agenda. We're going to hear first an overview from Margarida from New Angle. By the way, we sent a consolidated presentation to the emails of everybody who's registered. It's also posted in the chat box. So if you see the chats on the sidebar, you can follow along independently. Beginning at 5 minutes after the hour, we're going to hear from Margarida, who's been instrumental in putting this event together. We're going to share her details in case you want to follow up and learn more about the Portuguese healthcare sector. After that, we'll hear from Henrique, who is not only an academic, but very hands-on in the deployment and the strategizing for large-scale healthcare IT projects in Portugal. We're very fortunate. That'll be Henrique, after which we'll hear from Rita, from Fidelidade, which is the largest health insurance player in Portugal, followed by Micaela, Jose de Mello Saude, who's the Chief Medical Officer for Digital Transformation. All of these will be 15-minute presentations. Some of the presenters will have time for Q&A, others will not. We'll then have two final presentations, one from Rui Costa, General Manager for GE Healthcare in Portugal, the former Health Minister, Mr. Adalberto Fernandes. All of that will begin in a few minutes. As I said earlier, if you have to leave for some of this session, we're going to post the entire recorded video to the mHealth Israel LinkedIn community. If some of the speakers agree, I'm happy to share their contact details. We're also we're hoping to do more in the future. I do want to do a shout out for Joao Mendes Roter, who helped put this all together, who's based here in Tel Aviv. So we're still another minute or so before we hear from our first presenter, Margarida. I will mention there is another webinar event scheduled for June 15th. It's focused on the regulatory environment. There'll be a former commissioner from the FDA, a prominent member of the EMA, which is like the FDA of Europe, as well as an individual from Africa who's put together a Pan-African regulatory body talking about the impact that COVID-19 is having on the regulatory landscape. That's June 15th. So I do want to just again thank you for joining, thank our speakers, mention that this will run until about an hour and 40 minutes or so. And if you can't attend all of it, we're going to post the recorded final version on the mHealth Israel LinkedIn community page. So why don't we actually invite Margarida, if you're ready and available, we'll make you the first presenter. Margarida.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Do you see my presentation? So good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, Rita.
So good morning. Thank you for taking your time to learn about the Portuguese healthcare system. Thank you, Evi, for organizing it, and João, very much appreciated. Let me just tell you very few things just about New Angle. We are a small boutique consulting firm. One of our focus is healthcare. I personally have worked in healthcare consulting for the last 15 years at Deloitte, together with some of my colleagues at New Angle. So we have worked with every stakeholder in healthcare in Portugal, being providers, payers, pharma, medical devices, regulatory authorities, Ministry of Health. So just to give you an overview of our work, we are now very focused on helping in digital transformation. And we have been talking with some of Israeli startups, and so that's one of the reasons that we are also here, to let you know that we're here in Portugal and we can support your movements to Portugal if you're. So Portugal just is a small country, as you probably know. We sit on the west coast of Europe, which gives us a very well. We are very connected to Africa, speaking countries, European Union, of course, to Brazil, where we were many years ago. So we've always been connected, and that's what we intend to keep doing. We have a very interesting ecosystem for innovation, not as developed as yours, but we have good innovators here. We have good schools, so I think partnering could also be something that you could look at. And we are very good at challenges. So when we have a challenge, we usually overcome it. So I'll start now with some data, just to give you an overview of what the system is, so you understand a little bit on how things move when you talk to people in the healthcare system over here. A very high-level note on economy. Economy is determinant for everything. So our GDP is about 200 billion euros. We have been growing since 2014 at an average rate of 2.4%. That's not very high, but it has been higher than European Union in the last years. And we did come out of a big recession in 2014. Our unemployment rate has been steadily going low, and to about 6.5% in the end of 2019, which is very good for our history of unemployment. So we are about 10 million, a little bit more than you in Israel. We have a quite aging population. So we have 22% of people over 65, that makes it 2.2 million about, and 10% over 75. So more than 1 million Portuguese are over 75. This is due both to a high life expectancy, also to a low fertility rate, and of course it comes with downsides. As people age, they have more diseases and more chronic diseases. So we have more people living with chronic diseases. A lot of people have some kind of chronic disease, like 36% of the population has hypertension, 63% of over 25 has high cholesterol, 13% of the Portuguese population has diabetes, and it is estimated that another 20% could have pre-diabetes. And the Portuguese life quality is mainly affected by musculoskeletal diseases, depression, skin diseases, and migraine. So these are the major causes of morbidities. So aging makes some pressure over our budgets, as in every country, but here it's becoming sometimes challenging. Just to give you a little of an overview of the system, we have a health system outside, like the UK, which you probably know better, based on a national health service. So our system is mostly funded by taxes. although we have insurance and private system that is complementary to our public system. Everyone in Portugal is entitled to NHS, so we all can go to any public hospital, have our healthcare services. Nevertheless, many people have a private insurance or a private subsystem or a public subsystem, because we also have public subsystems. We have one very big one, which is the public system for the civil servants, where they withhold part of their salary to get other benefits and to get the rights to use private healthcare. Then we have smaller ones for military. That's mostly it. And also there is an important area also that the NHS also contracts with privates in certain areas. We have PPPs. We have 4 PPP hospitals in Portugal right now, and NHS contracts with private players for some type of services, mainly ancillary services and surgeries that are done in private settings. Our total healthcare expenditure was 18.4 billion in 2018. That's about 9.1% of GDP. And it has been growing at an average rate of 4.1% since 2014. So as you can see, it grows at a faster rate than GDP, which means that our budgets get pressured. 66.5% of these expenses is public expenditure, and 33.5% is private spending. In private spending, a lot of it is from families. So families take 27.5% of the private spending, and then the rest is mostly health insurance. Although private hospitals are more than public hospitals, you can see in this graph, we have about 119 private hospitals and 107 public hospitals, but their size is much smaller, and that results that they only have 31% of total beds compared with 69% in public sector, in public hospitals. Hospitals and outpatient services add up to about 70% of providers' expenditure, so that's the main area, and then pharmacies pick up another 15%. So as I said, we have this complementary coverage, private, public, and private. So about 40% of the Portuguese population has this double coverage. They have NHS because everyone is entitled to it, and they have either an insurance or a subsystem, public or private. So we have about this adds up to 4.3 million covered people with insurance. This is quite relevant because the private sector has been growing, and the coverage of people with health insurance has been growing at an annual rate of 5.3%, which means that the private sector is gaining a bigger role in our healthcare system, and so it's quite relevant. We have three bigger groups, healthcare groups, and we have the insurance market is quite concentrated in 3 or 4 companies, being 2 of them the major ones, and you have the pleasure to listen to Gomes of Multicare, which is actually the major healthcare insurance in Portugal. So this was just to give you an overview of the system. I think the best part comes next. So I'll pass my word to Henrique, I think.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we hear you.
Just share my slides. Thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. and I hope to make a brief participation. I think the challenges were innovation trends and focus. I decided to look at the focus within our digital health space. And in terms of innovation trends, I'm going to share some of my own perspectives on that. So basically, I think it may be a little bit too much, but anyway, here it goes. I think digital health in Portugal can be the new Silicon Valley for digital health. Actually, and there's a few reasons for this, which I will share with you today. I will look at the basic building blocks of digital health that we have. And within that, briefly mention about the culture and dynamics. On the other hand, we need to invest in some of the enablers for new projects and companies that might want to collaborate with Portugal or Portuguese companies. And then lastly, I will share some of my personal vision regarding digital healthcare systems as a way forward to blend digital with healthcare provision, and in particular, the ideas of digital patients, which we need to have if we are to design new mobile services for Portuguese people as well as for any citizen in the world. Portugal has worked throughout the last few years in a strict alignment with European directives in digital healthcare transformation. Portugal was the first country to share cross-border data, both e-prescription and patient summary, and has participated very actively in many collaboration projects. Myself having been the co-chair of the Health Network and many other projects in Europe. When we look at the existing services, this slide is not complete, but it depicts to you that along the entire life cycle, since you are born and dead in Portugal, be it the public sector or the private sector, there are various numerous digital services made available. And just to name a few, a national citizen ID for patients, the child's bulletin, the vaccination bulletin, things like sick leaves are digital, compulsory. We have death certification, which is electronic, and updating with real-time surveillance data on mortality every 5 minutes. Also compulsory reporting of diseases, and many other online services for booking and so on. There are more agencies in the Ministry of Health, but these are perhaps the more crucial ones that participate in technical, both financing and regulating, and then clinical governance that somehow relate to digital health. We have a national strategy for health information systems ecosystem. It's called Genesis 2020. It's finished now in December 19. We have been discussing the new strategy for the next 3 years. But you can see mobile health was a priority in the previous one, and it continues to be a priority. Regarding technical and semantic interoperability, Portugal is a very well fit country right now. We have technical architecture with deployment of services from local to national level, with information brokers and interoperability standards like HL7 and even FHIR messages. And in terms of clinical terminology, we have been using SNOMED since 14, and we've been using it in many sectors like allergies and nutrition, vaccination, and things like that. Regarding national flagship projects, we could stay here all day. I'll just mention to you one or two as iconic examples of the maturity, but also as opportunities for plug and play and new services. So, for example, the electronic health record system is not a monolithic platform. It is a platform that links to many systems, both public and commercial systems, and it's already expanding to link to private sector in many ways, pharmacies, labs, and even providers, private providers of healthcare. of course, it can completely links up all the public sector. This is, for example, the look and feel for a physician or a nurse in the public sector, and you can see it has then hyperlinks to more than 600 databases. In terms of online citizens, we have 2.5 million e-citizens. These are Portuguese that already use online services for health, and they use them with authenticated solutions, both the smart card readers and mobile ID. This is very important as we have become a very cybersecurity aware nation, and we have been working a lot on that area in the last 4 to 5 years. As I mentioned about the patient summary, it's not just a European cross-border project, it is a minimum data set. If you want to establish projects like AI algorithms based on certain characteristics of the patient, it is possible to do that for Portuguese patients because this has been created and it follows GDPR compliance. In terms of the mobile world, there are commercial applications as well as public applications. This is a screenshot of a few public applications that you can see. And the more important thing about them is that this one, NHS Wallet, is an SD card library.
We temporarily have lost audio from Henrique. Margarida, if you can hear me, can you just wave to the screen? Good. So we hear one another, or there may just be, there's some sort of error message with Henrique. We ask for your patience. I'm not exactly sure what the problem is, but there's some issue, some technical issue with Henrique on his connection. As I said earlier, all of these materials were shared. They're in this chat, which was the first posting. They're also available in the actual meetup presentation, or the meetup announcement, as well as in the comments of the meetup announcement. There's Henrique. I think, Henrique, can we hear you? Okay, please continue. Thank you.
Okay. So I was just mentioning about our telehealth strategy. And then in terms of mobile prescription, this means that any other solution that you can conceive in terms of telehealth will be able to have its finalization part, which means to make a prescription. So in Portugal, contrary to many countries in the world, doctors can prescribe on their mobile phone and the patients will receive it on their mobile phone in a very secure and safe way. And then, of course, to finalize in terms of telehealth, the hybridization of online with the with the phone services under the NHS 24 website and service, which is the national call center for patients, where in the future the plan is to link up with AI and chatbots. To finalize, there's an ongoing public consultation for the next strategy. And then in the last 5 minutes, I want to share with you 1 or 2 ideas. You can read them more online on my website. But basically, this is just to say that it's fine to put a lot of IT into healthcare systems, but it is different to conceive healthcare systems digital first. And in fact, I think as we rethink our healthcare systems, based on this pillar that patients are digital, they are no longer necessarily wanted to go into the hospital. And I think COVID crisis just emphasized the fact that people don't necessarily get better care because they physically go there. They'll get better care if they need to physically go there, and they do, in a timely manner. But if they can get their things straightened up digitally, they're perhaps safer and faster access. So in a way, we're talking about healthcare transformation. There's people more ready to talk about this. Former Minister of Health, Professor Adalberto will speak. He has been a transformator Actually, thanks to him, we had a very big push in our digital agenda under his governance. But definitely that healthcare transformation is not just IT, it is transformation in general. But having said this, we now have the motivation and the basis. The basis are secure data, privacy, and interoperability. These are the basis to build new systems. But also, we need a new concept. And let me share with you a concept that I've been building. It's not finalized, and this is of the digital patient. And on one hand, digital patients, we think of digital patient immediately as those that are progressively connected, sometimes for life. Like they have brain electrode implants, they have maybe a pacemaker, an insulin pump, all the time connected to them. But actually, digital patients are all of us, even if we're not sick yet, as we are measuring and we are capturing our wellness with track apps and health apps. And right now, the hottest debate in e-health in Europe is what about privacy and what about public health regarding trust trace apps for COVID. But this just means that Bluetooth zone around our phones is becoming our new skin. As I say, our new digital skin. But there's a second line of thought when you think about digital, which are digital sickness. Many people are becoming sick of too much digital, and we need to think about that as well as we move forward. So in conclusion, I would like to emphasize the idea of this new Silicon Valley for digital health. I would like to record that I mentioned that Portugal has built important basic building blocks for digital health. It has a culture and a dynamic of its own, and it needs to invest, not just the public sector and the private sector. Both need to have more digital in their surroundings, but we have the right enablers. National telehealth plan, financing models in the public sector on telehealth. We have good broadband and connectivity. We have digitally savvy patients, and we have 100% mobile prescription, not just e-prescription, and a full interoperable national electronic health record platform. And then if we can add on the technology, new ways of thinking on digital health in Portugal and worldwide, I think we will be offset and ready to go. So thank you very much. And if you don't have time for questions now, feel free to just drop me an email and I'll reply to those. Thank you very much.
Henrique, there was a question about if you have suggestions for how Israeli companies could collaborate or partner with Portuguese players. Do you have any sort of experience or insights about that?
Yeah, well, I think right now the best is just trying to get into touch with them. Happy to facilitate some of those contacts. But I think the question is, there's, I would say, two significant markets. There's the public sector market, in which, of course, it is important to talk with the Ministry of Health and SPMS. But there's a very important also private market. And it's important to use both entry routes as you want to explore this market. I also like to always remember Israeli companies or any other company, that the Portuguese market is a door to the Brazilian market as you prepare for both language and cultural changes in your own application.
Very good, thank you. There was another question about telehealth, but I think we'll hear much more about telehealth from Micaela later in the webinar. So Henrique, thank you very much, and Margarida, thank you for your comments and presentation. Rita from Fidelidade, are you available?
Yes.
Good, we can hear you if you're ready. Great.
Just a minute to upload my presentation. Can you see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for the invitation and taking your time to be here.
and listen to my perspective and Multicare perspective on digital health. By now, you have learned a bit about the context of our national health system and some figures, and also the technology building blocks and enablers that we have in Portugal on digital health. Multicare is the #1 health insurance in Portugal, is part of Fidelidade group. We have a market share over 37% and we cover more than 1 million lives, around 10% population. In the 20 years of history, we have been recognized by our innovative character and quality of service. Already in 2009, we were committed with prevention and included in all individual products a free checkup, something that is still quite unique in Portugal. By 2016, understanding the epidemic of cancer and its burden, we were the first to launch an oncology cover up to 2 million euros of treatment. And in the same year, we were the first to introduce in Portugal a telemedicine platform with only physicians in alliance with Teladoc, probably the biggest and most respected company in this field. Let's start by giving you an overview of the health insurance market in Portugal. Although private health insurance accounts for a small portion, around 4% of the total healthcare spending, Margarida already mentioned this to you, health insurance premiums have been growing steadily at around 8% per year since 2014, and more than 25% of population is currently covered by health insurance. And as Margarida already mentioned, there is on top the subsystems, the public subsystems. Growth has been fueled by the increased availability of private healthcare companies and by the reinforcement of health insurance as an employee benefit. Health insurance in Portugal is complementary to the national health system investments, and its value proposition is first based on convenience, ease of access, freedom of choice, and reduced times, and second on. Let me share with you that the Portuguese market is quite peculiar. Maybe it's because we are a small country, we don't know exactly, but it's concentrated on both sides. It's concentrated on the private health provider side, with top 3 companies accounting for more than 70% of the market, and also concentrated on the private insurance side, with top 3 companies accounting for more than 75% of premiums, led by Multicare, a Portuguese player, the company I'm representing. Second and third players are now part of international insurance groups. Medis India JS Group with 28.9%, and more recently with the acquisition by Generali of Seguradoras Unidas, Generali in third with 12%. So this was a quick overview of the sector. My second point of the agenda is dedicated to the mega trends that health insurers are facing, the ones that are relevant for the development of digital health, and what has been insurers' response. Well, the context we live in has fundamental challenges and opportunities. Western economies face similar trends, but clearly Portugal is expected to deal with above average cost pressures compared with other European countries. The first motive is that Portugal has a high proportion of elderly population, and this situation is expected to become worse. There are studies that by 2030, Portugal may have the 3rd oldest population in the world. The second motive is that Portugal has a very low level of physical activity, high proportion of overweight persons, and more than 60% of adult population has at least one chronic disease. Well, we deeply believe that a range of new technologies such as genetic advances, regenerative medicine, wearables and IoT devices, and artificial intelligence and many more can be enablers to make health and aging more sustainable. Let's work together to make this a reality. What can insurers do to change this? Well, basically, health insurance can help to change the game by moving from a claims payer. Of course, we have to pay well, but it's not only our duty, also to be a health partner and preventer. Insurers should proactively help clients to reduce that risks and at the same time offer compelling value-added services to stay healthy or improve their health status. This change in positioning should be done alongside with a better risk assessment during all customer life cycle and not only in the admission. Well, this path is not new to us, and here you can see the areas that we are investing. We and the other insurance firms in Portugal and around Europe. Since 2009, Multicare has a free prevention program. In the meantime, we have revised this composition and we have been introducing services to improve lifestyle, such as remote lifestyle coach and specific programs to help our clients, namely on tobacco cessation, weight loss, and nutrition. And we are planning much more. On the mental wellness side, we offer psychological support in our telemedicine platform, and we are preparing other services. Well, we believe that offering these services to improve health and well-being are important, but it's key to reward clients that have better lifestyles in order to attract and retain these clients. With this in mind, we are preparing a rewards program. Well, lastly but not the least, is online medicine, our telemedicine platform, which has won several prizes. This service permits our clients to have a medical consultation 24/7 with no additional costs. We offer consultations with GPs and pediatricians, specialty appointments with triage, for instance, dermatology, allergology, psychology, as well as a wide range of wellness services. This year, we introduced a symptom checker from Medictor and a fast drug delivery to complement our medical services. As Henrique mentioned to us, in Portugal, it's very easy to prescribe electronically. So our platform from the day one has been prescribing electronically. And I think this is one of the key success factors. All these telemedicine services have been crucial in serving our clients during COVID-19 pandemic. For instance, we have done more than 18,000 consultations in the month of March. On the condition management side, the focus is on developing solutions for chronic patients, for oncology patients, and for the elders, such as remote monitoring solutions. On the underwriting side, we search for models to improve accuracy of risk assessments with simplified customer experience. We have in place tele-underwriting, which has proved to be much more accurate, and we are testing a simplified underwriting process with 4 to 5 basic questions using artificial intelligence. This simplified underwriting is targeted at younger clients, which are very important to attract to balance our client portfolio. On the payment side, Multicare is already collaborating. It is true that it's just a starting point with key providers to prove value-based healthcare through patient interventions in care that facilitate better lifestyle monitoring and therapy adherence. Focus areas are diabetes, COPD, baby deliveries, and back pain for now. In addition, to promote the integration of new solutions in our portfolio, Fidelidade has a startup acceleration, which is protecting a program covering also health tech. So we have health tech, insurtech, and fintech. This Friday, we will have a demo day of the 4th edition of the program. Selected startups can participate in the bootcamp and test their ideas in our companies in the health tech space. The cases are Multicare, the health insurance, and also Saúde, one of the biggest hospital groups in Portugal. And winners apply for a roadshow with investors in China and a 10,000 euros prize. Last year, winner was Criem, a portable medical device for blood typing and disease detection. Finally, I don't want to leave without giving notice of the COVID-19 impact, both in digital health and in our sector here in Portugal. On the one side, COVID-19 brought a high degree of uncertainty to the health insurance business, as we believe that on-hold activity will be recovered. And we have seen that recovery already in this month of May. And there could be new sources of cost from the delay of clients to have proper care and the potential complications driven by COVID-19, which are still uncertain. On the other hand, we have seen a tremendous opportunity for digital health. We have seen a remarkable adoption in telemedicine and remote health, which is here to stay. All our competitors launched their telemedicine services, as well as the main healthcare providers, and adoptions both from clients and physicians have been significant. In conclusions, we have to change the game to cope with the healthcare challenges. The leader is the company which is forward-looking, and Multicare is such a company. Any questions?
Hi, Rita, this is Levy. You had a question regarding reimbursement for e-health in the private insurance market and whether there's coding and payment and coverage for those e-health services.
Yes, there is coverage for e-health services. We have been negotiating with each provider the pricing of the services, but yes, definitely yes, and we believe that is here to stay. So for the future, there will be other services that could be reimbursed from insurance companies.
Okay, there was, because of the aging population, there was some questions about your specific outreach to the senior population. Are you working on any of those programs in the e-health context?
Yes, we are. In fact, for a long period, more than a decade or so, health insurances were a bit protected from the elder population. Today is no longer the scene, and on the contrary, we are investing with new insurances for the senior persons, and we are developing senior care solutions, both on the health side, but also in safety, in entertaining. So solutions that will fulfill the older needs.
Okay. Rita, you're getting a flood of questions. That means people are very excited about your comments. There was some questions. You had mentioned payment by outcome, which sounds a lot like value-based instead of fee-for-service. Can you talk about that and your measurement of outcomes?
Yes, we are just starting with this path with the providers and with the prompts companies. We are taking our first steps, and yes, the idea it is to start measuring, and we are preparing this with the providers and the other partners to measure in specific diseases and have some risk sharing agreements with the providers and test this in real life. Yes.
So thank you so much, Rita. There were some other questions about remote monitoring and things like that, but I think Micaela, who I believe you're partnering with, is that correct? You're working with?
Yes, in more than one project. Yes, yesterday we mentioned the remote monitoring project, and we are opening also discussions on the value-based healthcare, and there is for sure a lot more projects initiated. Yes, it is.
So thank you so much, Rita. I'm very happy now to introduce Micaela from Jose de Mello Saúde, who is the Chief Medical Officer for Digital Transformation.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much, Levi, for your invitation. Thank you, Margarida. Well, in my presentation, I will try to share now. Let's see the presentation. Hello?
Yes, yes, we can.
Right. So in my presentation, I will try to give you some insight into the Portuguese private healthcare market and describe where we are in terms of digital health. So therefore, I will share some relevant information about the sector. Well, previous speakers have already approached this topic. I will present José de Mello Saúde, the private provider for whom I work, and describe where we are in digital health. And finally, I try to identify some barriers and opportunities, and we'll end with some takeaways. So the private healthcare sector has been consistently growing throughout the last decade and accounts for about 1/3 of Portugal's healthcare expenditure, which is about 6 billion euros. This was already said before. Its main drivers are an aging population. This was also already mentioned. And with aging comes chronic disease, cancer, disability. There is also some undercapacity of the public system, especially in the surgical area, with significant waiting times. And an increasing number of people are benefiting from private health insurances. And this, of course, facilitates access to private healthcare. So people usually consume healthcare in the public and in the private sector. They consume both. The private sector offers usually more convenience, like almost no waiting times. You can choose your provider, and usually facilities tend to be more comfortable. So there are many private healthcare providers, but 4 private players dominate the market. The largest being José de Mello Saúde. As you can see, there has been space for all 4. All 4 have been consistently growing near to the 2-digit figures in the last decade. They have done this mainly by expanding geographically, that is opening new units throughout the country, and by increasing activity within the very units. But there is still space to grow. So let me present José de Mello Saúde. José de Mello Saúde is a family company. It was founded 70 years ago and has been the largest private healthcare provider in Portugal since then. The brand of its private healthcare is named CUF. It's in Portugal. It is patients know us by the name CUF. It has more than 1.3 million clients, which is a lot for a small company like us, with 19 healthcare units, hospitals and clinics. It performs over 80,000 surgeries per year and about 2.7 million outpatient consultation. And José de Mello Saúde, I think this is important for you, the audience, has a strong commitment to investigation, development and innovation. It spent last year 2.4 million euros on it. So it started its road to digital in 2014 with the first patient portal and patient app on the Portuguese market. It has now over 500,000 users, and it's growing at a rate of 30% per annum This is just to illustrate that Portuguese people are tech savvy. They adopt. The app has been mainly focusing on administrative interactions like scheduling, billing, or digitally checking in at a clinic or at a hospital. But it also saves exam results and prescriptions, and in the future it will allow more and more clinical interaction. So it will be also a clinical interface for CUF's patients. José de Mello Saúde, I think this is also important for you, the Israeli startup community, set up a startup program in 2017. So since then it has worked with more than 17 startups, validating their products or services, piloting some of them and becoming their client in some cases. So this is a project that is going on. So feel free to apply. Here you see the webpage. And let me now give you an example for José de Mello Saúde's capacity to build and embed innovation in a very fast rhythm. As you know, Corona crisis is having a huge impact on healthcare provision. In Portugal, healthcare production decreased drastically. Patients were told not to see elective care because of infection risk. But they even avoided looking for on-site care when needed because of fear. So production in March, end of March and beginning of April, dropped about 80%. Now it's restarting again, but it was really a drastic drop. So we at José de Mello Saúde decided that it was urgent to open a new safe channel for our patients. And we set up and implemented teleconsultations. On the 16th of March, this was the day Portugal locked down. We decided to implement teleconsultations. 1 week later, we started with the first video consultation. So, and 2 months later, on the 23rd, we already had done over 20,000 teleconsultations. In peak times, we had 900 per day with over 1,200 doctors offering it in our CUF environment, and with more than 30 specialties. So first consultations in general medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics, and follow-up consultations in almost all other specialties. So we are clearly on our way to digital, not only with administrative interactions, but there is a clear vision that it must be also clinical interactions must also integrate this path. So since January this year, José de Mello Saúde has a Chief Medical Officer for Digital Transformation, which is the first of its kind in Portugal, and it happens to be me. And I think this is a very strong message towards digital health, and so the intention to take a fast track to it. So at José de Mello Saúde, we are convinced that the patient journey is becoming hybrid. So on their clinical journey, patients will interact with their providers remotely and on-site, and they will experience digital and human touch points according to what fits better to the problem or the issue to be solved. So this is our conviction. But of course, there are still barriers. And one is the reimbursement model. So Rita already talked about it, and there are efforts to look for new ways of reimbursement. But at this very point, the pay for service model still dominates. So long-term health results, value-based healthcare, or population health approaches are not yet financially rewarded by the insurance companies. And that makes it more difficult for things like telemonitoring or things like symptom checkers, all those things that are self-service by patients. Then another barrier is that there is still a weak sense of urgency. So market and revenues in the private sector have been growing with the traditional system. So COVID-19, of course, may have changed perception recently, but I think it's too early to know whether this perception will endure. I think we are doing efforts to get this awareness that changes that were made during COVID-19 should prevail, and I think there is a will to do so. But we must wait and see whether this then happens in the magnitude that we would like it to be. And of course, the recent economic crisis, 2014, and the current corona crisis increase financial uncertainty, and this obviously will impact the willingness to take risks. But there are still areas of opportunity. So to me, although it may seem contradictory to what I said before, I think assisted living, telemonitoring, and IoT are main opportunities. And simply because the problem is so big and it will be bigger in the future that there is no way not to address it. So aging and the growth of chronic disease create a need for solution to better manage disease and disability from home and to prevent institutionalization. So this is a problem that the Portuguese society, public and private, has to address. There is no way to not to do it. Then of course, I think a big area of opportunity is artificial intelligence to increase clinical efficiency. So automation, augmented information, and clinical decision support leveraged by artificial intelligence, they promise huge gains in efficiency, quality, and safety. Gains in efficiency, of course, are supported by the financial system. As we move out of hospitals and clinics, and as we assist the global shift from on-site to remote care, the possibility of taking blood samples, for instance, at home, or performing point-of-care tests at home yourself, this is still limited, and it's still it's an opportunity to be tackled to get telehealth even to increase its adoption, and I think this is a good area for new businesses and for new products and services. So to sum up as takeaways, the Portuguese market is tech savvy, the Portuguese consumer, the Portuguese patient is tech savvy. So for instance, in teleconsultations, we had very good adoption by the elderly. We don't know whether helped by their daughters and sons, but teleconsultation had a high adoption among the elderly. Then it is a startup-friendly country, and it has a very active own startup ecosystem, but startups from outside are very welcome. Keep attention to quick wins and capability of monetization. It's appreciated when you present your products. And of course, don't bet on closed systems, on silos. Interoperability and scalability are very, very important for a good adoption. So thank you very much for your attention, and you find me here on LinkedIn. Feel free to contact me. I'm happy to take questions now.
Micaela, there was a question about regulatory barriers related to telehealth and monitoring solutions, and also as that relates to existing tools and solutions. Regulatory barriers.
Regulatory. So regulatory barriers. The data protection regulation obviously is regulatory, a regulatory framework that you have to respect. The Portuguese medical board has in its deontologic code a whole chapter dedicated to telemedicine, and it's very open and supportive, but obviously consent, doctors and patients have to give their consent using telemedicine. Well, there are obviously regulatory limitations what medical devices are concerned, but basically this is what these are European those barriers that you will find throughout Europe by European legislation. This is what you are going to find in Portugal. I'm not aware of something more restrictive in Portugal than what European regulation limits in general. So data, of course, have to be stored in Europe. These are the most important things that I'm aware of at this moment. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, there's a question about telehealth for preventive efforts, including consultation with folks like nurse dietitians or physiotherapists, mental health, etc. Where is that in terms of deployment and process?
So there is telerehabilitation in the public system. There is a hospital in Portugal which already uses telerehabilitation, actually with the Portuguese startup, SWOT. I don't know whether you know them. It is, so far as I'm aware, it is, but Rita may help me there, whether there is reimbursement of this service. I'm not aware of that. So yeah, there is reimbursements for teleconsultations. So this is not an issue, but for other teleservices like telemonitoring, like telerehabilitation, we are still, so you have, of course, out of pocket this option, but we have to work together with insurances on this topic.
Okay, thank you, Micaela. Yeah, exactly right. We still don't have reimbursement for telemonitoring and telerehabilitation. The telemonitoring, we are doing these projects in remote monitoring, and the idea is after the pilot, so within 6 months, is to have some kind of financing models to this. So it will be to 6 to 9 months is to have something, we believe. And on the area of telerehabilitation, we have in the it is the injuries at work. In the injuries at work, we are already using telerehabilitation, and it is already an area we are investing. On the health side, we still don't have we still don't have a financing model to this, but nobody came to us asking to finance if they can. Of course, we will look into this better and propose a financial model.
We have these pilots within the diabetes in José Melso that we do with Multicare, but in the public sector, there are financial incentives for public hospitals to adopt telemonitoring in chronic disease, namely in COPD, in heart failure. There are very successful programs already in place within these areas in the public sector. So it is happening. Private sector will surely implement it within the next couple of years. I'm convinced of that.
So, Micaela, I want to thank you so much for an excellent presentation. We have two more presentations. One will be from Rui Costa, presenting from GE Healthcare, followed by Adalberto Fernandes. Rui, are you available?
Yes, I am. Can you listen to me?
Yes.
Good. I'm preparing to share. Okay. First of all, thank you so very much to the organization for inviting me, and also to be able to listen to the quality of the presentations that have been really presented before. My task here is to give you a bit of the idea of what GE Healthcare is doing in Portugal, and also about the medical devices market in our country. As many said, for us, we are trying to, let's say, answer to the main trends that we feel our market has today. And those are, for sure, and many has been said about it, the digitalization of healthcare. Portugal, in what has to do with public contracting, did a lot over time and has a big experience, and we are closing, to some extent, moving forward with other areas besides the ones that were mentioned before on that specific aspect of digitalization of healthcare. Patient outcomes, definitely. If we move to precision medicine, if we move further to value-based healthcare outcomes and the measurement of outcomes, to be able to have our model, our health model based more on that, are absolutely key. The capacity and the availability of all that has to do with medical devices, and specifically to the area that I'm going to put more emphasis in, which is equipment. So medical equipment has to do a lot with using the capacity installed, updating the installed capacity, and to having the devices ready to really deliver based upon some of the trends that are out there today, and are no longer futuristic, but really enabled today, like, for instance, artificial intelligence and definitely productivity. This should lead to precision health. A healthcare system that allows all the actors to be integrated, efficient, and the personalization of the treatment, the diagnosis, the treatment, and the monitoring, the 3 steps that we see as the trends in the market, to be delivered, personalized to each and every patient that reaches and needs the healthcare system. What we do here in Portugal, what GE Healthcare is about, is mainly about equipment, medical devices, but equipment and enterprise solutions. So we have several business lines. We are in the imaging side with magnetic resonance, computed tomography, molecular imaging, X-rays, and so on. In the ultrasound system, we provide also devices for critical care, and these have been recently, due to the COVID pandemic, really under scrutiny and with big demand for many of our customers. digital solutions, not only the PAX-RIS that are the common ones, but as Micaela said a while ago, and this was also something that is an advice to each and everyone. We should not lock our specs to a certain system. So vendor neutral archives is something that we are really putting a big emphasis on, to share the imaging that is collected from our imaging devices, so our imaging diagnosis devices, and to make them available for not only for the doctors in many aspects, but also to be handled as a repository of images that are curated and annotated to be able to deliver and to create algorithms in artificial intelligence. And we do have another side of our business, which is pharmaceutical diagnostics, basically construct media and molecular imaging, radiopharma agents. How do we innovate? Innovation is absolutely key for any company that wants to be that wants to play an active role in the medical devices area and in the health sector. GE overall is a long company in the market, always providing innovation in their devices, in our equipment, but more and more we want to move towards
We have a moment in which
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. To an integrated, high efficiency and highly personalized health to each patient. So our goal in innovation is always to increase capacity to deliver improved productivity and better patient outcome. We are today, and here in Portugal, very much into the development, not only of new capabilities that come with the devices more often, but new business models to support our customers. So medical devices really has a very broad definition, but in very few words, it is considered as any instrument, apparatus, a machine, appliance, implant, reagent, software, or any material that is provided for human beings for the diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, or treatment. So you see in this very interesting, from my point of view, scheme, that it can come from a scanner, a MRI device, a magnetic resonance device, or something very as simple as quantum. So it has a very, very broad definition. All of this should and can and should be treated, of course, in a look of how can it deliver the better outcome with the highest efficiency. We've seen a lot about the landscape of Portugal. I'm not going to go through what the previous colleagues have said, but nevertheless, we see that the Portuguese demographics it's really has some challenges, and we see that on the annual death, everything that has to do with cerebral vascular diseases, ischemic, so strokes and all that, and also the prevalence of Alzheimer is really a challenge in this country with aging population. Regarding the market, the spend of the medical devices market is around 1.2 billion, so 1,200 million euros per year. We've seen that it is around 9% of the GDP, and you can see also where in the majority of this money is spent nowadays. Regarding hospitals, which is our area of acting, of expertise, it is pretty much half and half. We have the PPPs, which are 4 nowadays, and you have all this data that I'm not going to go through. Just to say that it is a vibrant market here. It is a market where that is quite mature, the Portuguese market for medical devices. It presents a high level of sophistication. As it was said before, the Portuguese are early adopters for all that is technologically driven. They are educated consumers. We have really great doctors in all, I would say, all specialties that expect to have high quality medical devices. And it normally is a bit limited by the expenditures and the budgets for expenditures for capex that hospitals have, but nevertheless, it is a vibrant market. And you can only see that we are importers of medical equipment, and medical equipment comes majorly in the major suppliers are the US. GE is one of the companies here that is a US original company, but also from Germany, France, Japan, and later in the past few years also China increasing in the medical devices market here in Portugal. We are striving for precision health, and we really believe that in here we see it being let's say built upon 3 pillars: the diagnostics, the precision diagnostics, later on the ability to provide the therapeutic to this diagnosed patients, also in the way that they need according with their specific and individual requirements, and later on the monitoring of the patients over time. If we see that today we have a certain reality, we have to move into more personalization devices and the ability to provide the treating of the imaging, the diagnostics, the exams, so that our clinicians can have easier and faster access and limit the possibility of having false positives or false negatives in their diagnosis. Then we have to deliver targeted therapeutics. So everything that has to do with the biomarker-driven therapies, we see a lot of potential for the future development here in our country. And later on, the lack of complexity and simplification of our processes and the proactive approach of monitoring patients in these chronic diseases that were mentioned before, and that the elderly population is suffering and is still expected to be suffering even more in the future. It's absolutely key to improve what is the most critical thing here, which is the quality of life over 65 years, one of the indicators that is being monitored very heavily. The issue of ecosystem, we really believe in the ecosystem. So we are partnering with a lot of companies. We are looking for the possibility to deliver a landscape of solutions that, and also let's say a platform where innovators can also create and test algorithms specifically for artificial intelligence, using the huge amount of data that we have, the huge amount of images that we have. This platform is already created. It's called Edison, and it is available for the startups that want to move further in this area to really test algorithms using the big data of images that we have in our databases. So the ecosystems to be able to deliver precision health and value-based medicine is for us absolutely key. And please feel free to contact me if you are one of the companies or you know that are interested in knowing more about it and how to connect. Last but not least, I wanted to have some reflections. Yeah, we here, as many countries, have still the lowest price criteria in the public contracts. To some extent, this could be a limit in the access of innovation. So it is something for the political sector and for the decision makers to really have a look on. We at the Portuguese Medical Devices Association is very much into it and working with the decision makers at the hospital and the Ministry of Health in order to be able to shape this in another way. Bureaucracy can also be an issue. Nevertheless, we see that over time, with the adoption of public contracting platforms, and now with the issue that is also very much related to the reduction, and we believe it will have a role in the reduction of the debts, which is the electronic invoicing that is being implemented in our country, making it available for us, for the companies, to electronically invoice our customers and save a lot in the administrative handling of invoices. Also will help to reduce the debt specifically from the public sector towards the medical devices companies. You see these charts that it had a reduction in the last year, and today it is much better, but it's still one of the points that we have to face every day, the debt of the public sector. And last but not least, and this is my last point, we have an install base of equipment at the hospitals that has been becoming obsolete over times. There are the golden rules for replacement from the COSIR, for the medical imaging equipment, especially for imaging. And I give you here two examples. We see that over the period of the financial crisis, the obsolescence of medical devices increased, not only in Portugal, but also in Portugal. Said that it is absolutely key to be able to deliver a more digitalized, personalized, and precision health medicine, that we enable over time the equipment at the hospitals, the medical devices, to be able to really deliver new algorithms, new functionalities to help our clinicians, at the end of the day, helping our patients to have a better health. And you have here all our contacts, and I'm fully available for your questions. And if you feel free also to use my contacts at a later stage. Thank you very much.
Rui, there was one question about EHR and interoperability. Could you talk about that, please, before we transition to Adalberto?
Yeah, very, very interesting. I mean, the interoperability of the medical devices is absolutely key. We've seen that not only the connection between the devices, so that the information flow can not only be collected, but also that it is delivered and available at the clinician side when he has to take decisions, and also on all the devices that are implantable, that are used, that they connect not only with the patient, but also with the ones that are monitoring the patient. So this is very key for the third pillar that I've mentioned, the monitoring of the patient over time. So on the three pillars, if you remember that we see here as a trend, the precision diagnosis, precision therapeutics, and later on the monitoring, the interoperability and the ecosystems that allows the several medical devices manufacturers to have open protocols so that the devices can connect and exchange information with each other, it's absolutely key. We do not see, as Micaela said a while ago, the future of somebody having a closed system to supply to our customer, to the hospital or to the end user. We see that this has to be upgradable and has to be able to exchange data with other devices. Not sure if I answered correctly.
Yeah, that was very good. Excellent presentation. Again, everybody, just a reminder that all of these presentations are consolidated and posted to the LinkedIn community as well as to the Meetup site. We now, again, I want to thank Rui. I want to thank all of our speakers so far. There's one more speaker, and I'll ask Margarida to transition into our final segment.
Okay, thank you, Roy. So now I will present Mr. Adalberto Campos Fernandes. He was ex-Minister of Health. He's a professor. And I will start, or I will ask to make his final comments and remarks and talk a little bit on his vision about the opportunities and challenges in our healthcare system.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate being with you in this magnificent section. I learned a lot with your presentations, and I'd like to thank to Margarida the invitation. Allow me a special word to Professor Henrique Martins, because he was indeed one of the responsibles of the digital health transition in Portugal. And I'd like to emphasize his role and his determination working with us and partly with me while I was in the government between 2015 and 2019, 20. And he has done a very, very, very good work. So I don't have really a presentation because I'd be disadvantaged with you because you are so competent and with so very good and excellent presentations. And my contributions is also to have some views. I told Margarida and some final remarks considering the role of the health systems in the modern Europe and considering the real circumstances that we are living now with COVID-19 crisis. So we are now living a new world and with new challenges, and we don't know really what will be the health systems tomorrow, in a year, or in 10 years. So by sure we have the idea that digital ecosystem and digital transformation will be necessary to guarantee and to assure that are the political main recommendations either by the WHO, either by the national governments and the European Commission, that every country should have universal health coverage. We are now more discussing the importance and the role of public responsibilities in matters of health. So countries must have a very strong public financing, and countries must have a very strong responsibility of integration of healthcare, because we cannot in the near future be so unprepared as we were regarding the emergence of COVID-19. And you know, in the next few years, we'll have new virus and new COVID-19, 2021, because we are facing it all over the world, emerging diseases beyond the chronic diseases and the burden of disease of chronic diseases. Partly, we also are facing now a poverty crisis and an economic crisis with an unknown dimension. We don't know really tomorrow what will be the employment rate in Portugal, in France, in Spain, in Italy. So we must protect. The key word is to protect people. And to protect people, we must have integrated health systems, naturally with cooperation and collaboration of all, the social sector, the private sector, and mainly the lesson that probably we well learned in this late 3-4 months is the need to assist political decision in science. So to have political decision science-based, to work with academia, to work with investigators. And now the work in progress in the European Commission and either in the national governments, in the Portuguese government, we are doing the same, is to have a plan and a strategy for the next 3-5 years. Considering health not an expenditure, a negative cost or a negative expenditure of the national budget, but as an important part of delivering development, economic sustainability, and the creation of well-being of people and naturally economic development. So it is clear for us, political and public health decisions and the scientists and the people operating in markets like our friends that make presentations earlier, that we live in health in matters of a digital, a sort of a digital ecosystem. And it is important from a political point of view and from a citizen point of view that solutions must be keys. Keep it simple and stupid. Keep it simple and stupid in order to be available to every people, even if you're talking about people with lack of education and lack of knowledge, technological knowledge. And the discussions that we are running now in Europe concerning the surveillance and the monitoring of COVID-19 and other emergency diseases with mobile apps and invading in a certain way the privacy of people, it's a new frontier that we are now opening. And more than discuss if telemedicine or health or it will be paid or not paid by private operators or by public operators. It is a reality, and I think Henrique mentioned the idea of, or Micaela, the idea of we are facing a new model of health system. It's a dual health system, an hybrid health system. So new horizon and new paradigms of health system and health organization. A very important and central role of the public financing and the public provision. So it is important not to forget. In another meeting of this, I suggest Margarida to invite one of two leaders of the public hospitals and the public organizations, and taking advantage of the new startups like yours and countries like Israel. This is for us an inspirational country because it's quite too oriented to innovation and to the discovering of new worlds in technological means. So it is necessary to cooperate, to keep in mind that there is a new centrality considering the role of the public authorities and public systems. And you must read what Chancellor Angela Merkel wrote some weeks ago, and to bring science and scientists to the arena of the political decision, to work with companies like GE and other companies that are quite important because they are leading and they are bringing to us the innovation that we need to improve and to get better results to our citizens. And finally, it is necessary to understand that we are no more talking only about telemedicine or teleconsultation. We are talking about the empowerment of citizens and the choices that citizens can make by themselves. So choosing to drink or not to drink, choosing to have overweight or not to have overweight, to practice physical exercise. There is a new world where public health and preventive issues and interventions simultaneous by public and private entities should be designed and built in a cooperation and collaboration perspective. So thank you very much. It was a very interesting webinar, one of the best webinars that I visited in the recent weeks. And I hope that you came to Portugal, all of our friends from Israel, because Portugal is really one of the best countries in Europe, with a small size, but with an extraordinary ability to adapt to difficulties, to diseases, to financial crises, to international difficulties. And we have historically a very good relationship with Israel and these people. So please think in Portugal, because you will have great opportunities to discover not only nice opportunities of work, but nice people, because the Portuguese are very, very, very nice people. Thank you very much.
Margarida, do you have? Would you like to moderate any Q&A from the community? Margarida, you're on mute.
No, I'm not on.
You're okay now. I'm sorry. You're okay.
Okay. So there is a very long question about telework and on digital transformation, and asking if it wouldn't be more efficient to maintain telework and then bet on a digital transformation process that would allow the risk and social distance to be reduced. It seems this confinement could pose more risks than benefits because companies are yet too close to remote work. So the question is, how should we deal now that we were closed? How should we take advantage of that? Taking a healthcare view, of course.
Margarida?
Yes.
It's for me the question?
Oh, yes.
Oh, okay. I did not understand. So, sorry to probably not to be political correct, but let's make it clear, and definitely from my point of view clear, the confinement was necessary, was mandatory to save lives and to protect the national health services. So it is not for me a question to be discussed, because all the countries that decided not to do, I should say, effective and courageous confinement, they failed. So now it's clearly the moment to relieve the measures and to bring to the new normal with people more educated, more sensitive, with more sensitivity to health problems, and with a new relation, social relation that can be, in fact, effective, warm, and sweet, but it can also, even that, be sure and be safe. So now is the time in Europe to release and to relieve the confinement, but it is also the time in Europe to inform people and to empower people, because people, all of us citizens, we are responsible for our health, but we have also a huge responsibility in the health of the other people, the other citizens. So responsibility and solidarity between all of the people, all of the citizens, and please, confinement and restraint and telework was decisive, was definitely a tool to gain and to save lives.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Margarida, Adalberto, all of our presenters, and hopefully we'll continue what we've started. Many, many thanks to everybody, and obrigado.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Obrigado. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Obrigado.